It's the most mid-time of the year. This stretch between SummerSlam and the Royal Rumble, aside from a brief November sojourn into War, both of the games and brand variety, is usually a bit of a wasteland, littered with stalling feuds and B pay-per-views, and perhaps the most B of all the B shows is WWE Payback. Sure, it was a fairly landmark show in 2020. Roman Reigns won the Universal title on that night, and so to highlight the significance of that moment, WWE have brought the show back and will be celebrating 3 years of Tribal Chief dominance by, checks notes, not booking him on the show. So come along, one and all, and let's get mid. I'm Dan, hailing from partsFUNknown, and here are the 10 worst WWE Payback matches ever. Number 10, Dean Ambrose vs. Kane, 2013. Defending his US Championship, Dean Ambrose took on Kane in a match that had very little build and even less intrigue. At this point, Ambrose is starting to get over with the crowd in the babyface fashion, but even that goodwill can't keep them engaged for this snooze fest. It's made even worse by the triforce of commentary that is JBL, Michael Cole, and Jerry the King Lawler, who all appear to be talking about a match that I don't think is the same one I'm watching. What's chaos to us is normal for Ambrose, yells JBL as the pair exchange rest holds for 9 minutes and 55 seconds. Here's that unorthodox style Ambrose is known for, as Dean hits such wild moves as a knee strike and a drop kick. The crowd does perk up as Kane takes the announce table apart, only for Ambrose to hit a DDT on the outside and score a victory for a count-out before running away from the ring, and absolutely nobody goes through the table at all. This match certainly happened, feels like too much praise. Number 9, Tamina and Naomi versus the Bella Twins, 2015. Payback 2015 took place in a weird time for the women's division in WWE. AJ Lee had just retired, and we were 2 months away from the new blood of Charlotte, Becky, and Sasha being brought in, so the division is just in limbo. While the match between Naomi, Tamina, and the Bellas is actually broadly fine, it's uninspired and obvious booking, in contrast to the fever pitch down in NXT, which means the crowd is colder than a cold thing. Look, this is my first list, bear with me. It's all just so standard. They come in, they do their spots, the villains pin the champ to set up a title match, repeat to fade. While certainly a marked improvement on the 30 seconds given to the match that started the movement, it's still emblematic of a division in dire need of a bit of fire. Fortunately, the ensuing women's evolution totally worked and now everything's fine. Number 8, Rusev vs. Big E, 2014. On paper, Rusev vs. Big E is a match that should have Vince McMahon salivating. 2 big, meaty men slapping meat and a prime opportunity for a healthy bit of xenophobia. And indeed, that's how the match starts. Lana comes out, praises Putin, which is a bit yikes, and then out comes Rusev, waving a Russian flag with a Putin slideshow behind him, which is a bit more yikes. Enter Big E, carrying a flag of his own, and the two have a dick-waving contest with their big flag dicks. But the real ding for this match comes from the fact that they're given just 3 short minutes, which is simply not enough. WWE love a squash match, but as a certain ring general has shown, sometimes letting your big beast take a bit of a battering before powering onto the win is just as effective. What Rusev and Big E do with the time they're given is pretty decent, but it's also deeply frustrating. Still, at least it was actually a match, unlike Number 7, Kofi Kingston vs. Bo Dallas, 2014. Calling this a match at all feels disingenuous because no moves are exchanged and it lasts precisely as long as a Kane entrance. Announced on the pre-show, Kofi stands there as Bo Dallas comes out to give a "Your Sports Team Sucks" promo, the bell rings, then bang, fire, out comes Kane, Kofi runs over and the bell rings again. 32 whole, pointless seconds that none of us will ever get back, and thanks to this list, I have lost twice. After the bell, Kane hits a chokeslam and a tombstone on Kofi, pays 0 attention to Bo, then leaves. The announce team have less interest in the segment than the live crowd. Aside from some half-assed speculation about Kofi subtweeting the authority, Bo says Bo leave again, and I'm left wondering why this was booked for the pay-per-view instead of on Raw, and absolutely furious that this waste of time couldn't have been given to Big E and Rusev. Oh well. Number 6, Enzo and Cass versus the Vaudevillains, 2016. This is a trickier one on the list because it's got very little to do with the match itself and more the scary realities of pro wrestling. Just as the match starts to get going, Gotch of the Vaudevillains goes to throw Enzo through the ropes. Unfortunately, Enzo's momentum carries him directly into the middle rope, causing his head to snap back and thud hard on the ring apron, knocking him clean out. It's instantly obvious there's a serious problem, and everyone looks on with faces of grave concern while a stretcher is brought out and the ref throws up the dreaded X. Compounding the tension is the production's choice to keep showing slow-motion replays of the horrific moment a man's skull blasts plywood and steel. Fortunately, we were given updates throughout the show, and Enzo only suffered a concussion, although the word "only" is doing some very heavy lifting there. As my mother always told me, heads are precious and concussions are nothing to joke about. Number 5, Neville vs King Barrett 2015. Look, I know people love a good tournament, but if I'm being totally honest, I fail to see why any modern superstar would actively want to win King of the Ring. Sure, adding your name to a list that includes Harley Race and Bret Hart sounds great, but in the latter-day WWE, all you get for winning is a new entrance graphic, a few extra props to fit in your carry-on, and a dull feud that ultimately goes nowhere. Which is precisely the fate that awaited King Wade Barrett, whose reward for beating Neville in the tournament final was to lose to him a few weeks later. This was their third match in the space of a month, and the ideas had clearly run out. Barrett's ground and pound and Neville's crowd-popping style just don't take off. No pun intended, and I'm genuinely sorry it happened. Just as you think the match is about to pick up, Neville hits a beautiful dive over the top rope and manages to beat the ref's count just in time for Barrett to decide, actually, you know what? I'll just take the L, thanks. Because everybody, wins and losses don't matter, especially not when you have a crown and scepter bought last minute in the kids section of a nearby Target. Number 4, Paige vs Alicia Fox 2014. Now the thing you need to know about Alicia Fox is she's a bit mad. Look at her put on a crown. Look at her drink some cola. Look at her pause in the middle of a match to yell "Rain" aggressively into the general direction of the timekeeper. Kooky, wacky, wild. That's about the sum total of the booking in this match, which saw Fox take on Norwich's second favourite daughter for the Divas title. What will she do if she loses? What will she do if she wins? Goodness. To be fair, I suppose it was alright for the standard of competition afforded to the women's division at the time, but it's still not good. It's as pedestrian as a stroll in the park. Worst of all though, you guessed it, our old friends at the announce table up to their tomfoolery once again. Paying very little attention to the match and trading bad jokes, it just makes for an uncomfortable watch. At one point, Fox has a submission hold in, and JBL starts yelling about how the ref should be counting as her shoulders are on the mat. This despite Fox's shoulders being demonstrably not on the mat. It's just not fun, and Paige's shock at picking up another win didn't help build her aura as a star on the rise, so much as make her look like a continually lucky underdog. Not the one. Number 3, Rybaxel vs the Road Brothers 2014. This match is the absolute pinnacle of fine. If you look up fine in the dictionary, you'll see this match. You'll also see that fine sometimes means of very high quality, which is confusing. So to be clear, cross that definition out using a fine-tipped pencil. It's a television tag team match at best in front of a crowd that doesn't seem to care. Each team hits a few moves, some of them land, and some of them simply do not. And after eating the loss, Cody tells Goldust he needs a better partner, which leads us to the debut of Stardust, which, I'll be honest, is a large part of why this match is so high on the list. I also take personal offense to the mashup of each team's entrance themes. 4 individual themes with complete tonal distinctions somehow forced together into heinous audio garbage. It sounds like music that was made by someone who's never heard music before. Hate it. No thank you. Put it in the bin. Number 2, Charlotte vs Natalya 2016. I'm earnestly a fan of Natalya. I think she's a talented worker who was too good for the Divas era but not up to scratch on the mic for what we expect in the modern age of women's wrestling. But as her recent match with Rhea Ripley on Raw shows, on her day, she can put in a real shift, which is why I'm gutted to say that this match is truly bobbins. This match is a Disney live-action remake of their far superior match at NXT TakeOver 2 years prior, right down to the presence at ringside of Ric Flair and Bret Hart. Whereas the first match was about the new generation of classic wrestling dynasties coming together to find out which is best, this was about Bret evening the score in case a doddery old Richard interfered again, which ends up being entirely moot as he doesn't try and we basically forget they're there. The match itself isn't very exciting either, with some bang average back and forth and some miscommunication between moves, and you're left waiting for a lift-off that never quite materializes. And then, to pop a lovely little cherry on the cake, the match finishes with a rehash of the Montreal Screwjob that makes no kind of sense. Charlotte pops Natty in the sharpshooter, Little Nate's Charles Robinson rings the bell and runs off, and everyone is left wondering why in the hell we can't just move on. Bobbins. And number 1, House of Horrors 2017. In the wake of his devastating passing, Bray Wyatt's genius impact is being rightfully celebrated across the wrestling community. Part of what made his creative genius so great was his fearlessness in pushing the boundaries of this performing art that we all love. But when you are such a fearless risk-taker, not everything you do is going to land, especially when those greenlighting your creative choices don't quite know how to handle them. The conceit of this match was that Randy and Bray would brawl in Bray's House of Horrors before making their way back into the arena for a pin or submission. Trouble is, by trying to be both a cinematic experience and an in-ring match, it managed to achieve neither satisfactorily. Production choices across the board just don't work. It takes place in the dead of night during an otherwise sunny San Jose evening, and Randy spends most of the match walking around the house checking out the props like a student horror film version of location, location, location. The idea should be that Bray has snared Randy into the House of Horrors to destroy him mentally and physically for taking away his WWE Championship, cause Randy to attempt to flee, but you simply can't because Bray has the whole world in his hands hands. Instead, they do a series of walk and brawls, Bray drops a fridge on Randy and makes his way back to the arena, only to find that Randy is the magic one who has somehow made his way back to the arena as well. It's an utterly backwards execution of a potentially brilliant concept. But if there's any lesson we can take from Wyndham Rotunda's all too short time with us, it's worth being a little bit fearless. Even the ideas that don't pay off become milestones on the way to pure magic. And that's our list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Put your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And while you're at it, why not check out a few of our other lists and the smorgasbord of content we have for you on this here channel.
Odd couples come in all shapes and sizes, be they lonely, grubby rubbish collectors and his stylish partner who's into gardening and laser beams, or a sensitive, softly spoken writer and his sultry, supremely knowledgeable pocket-sized companion, or Pete Davidson and literally any woman he has ever dated. To paraphrase Paula Abdul, sometimes people just want to pork their phones. Opposites, definitely.